Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down Dr. Eric Berg's fascinating research to reveal what we're calling the biological ladder to weight loss. We're going to see exactly how you can safely unlock your body's metabolism. Seriously, we're diving right into your cells to visualize what's actually happening in there, and we'll map out a really precise step-by-step ladder to get things fixed. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover what intermittent fasting actually is. Second, we'll look at the two key weight loss hormones. Third, we'll explain exactly why snacking stops weight loss. Fourth, we'll climb the levels of fasting. And finally, making the transition safely. Let's just jump right in.
Okay, part one, what is intermittent fasting? Now, the biggest misconception out there is that intermittent fasting is just another diet. It's really not. It doesn't dictate what you eat, but rather when you eat. It's a biological tool, literally just a pattern of eating and not eating. And this completely shifts the focus away from restrictive calorie counting. For decades, we've all been told that weight loss is simply the straightforward math equation, right? Just got calories. But honestly, that approach completely ignores the biological reality of how our bodies actually process food and store fat. It's all about timing, not deprivation.
Moving on to part two, the two weight loss hormones.
To really understand why meal timing matters so much, we have to look at a stark villain versus hero dynamic taking place right now in your bloodstream. On one side, we have our hero, growth hormone. Of all the fat-burning hormones in your body, growth hormone is absolutely the most powerful. It's essentially an anti-aging superhero that protects your muscles, builds lean body mass, and literally incinerates fat. But then, on the other side, we have the villain, insulin. Insulin actively stores fat and acts as a massive biological roadblock. Actually, Dr. Berg points out that in the presence of insulin, you simply cannot lose weight. No way around it. It's a dominating hormone. It's the main culprit behind that stubborn gut, and it completely shuts down the fat-burning superpowers of growth hormone.
That brings us to part three, why snacking stops weight loss.
Okay, get ready for a massive paradigm shift. Eating anything spikes insulin. Yes, even that handful of almonds or that so-called healthy carrot stick. We always hear that only carbs or sugars cause insulin spikes, right? Well, the research shows that eating, just in general, increases insulin, regardless of what the food actually is. Our bodies simply aren't designed to graze all day long like cows. When you have breakfast, then a mid-morning snack, then lunch, an afternoon snack, dinner, and then maybe a late-night bite, you are trapped in a constant cycle of insulin spikes. And that nonstop grazing, it leads directly to a really dangerous condition called insulin resistance. So how does insulin resistance actually work? Well, Dr. Berg uses this absolutely perfect earplug metaphor. Think about it. When you graze all day, there's so much insulin flooding your system that your cells eventually try to protect themselves by just blocking it out. They essentially put in earplugs. Because there's no two-way communication happening, your pancreas doesn't get the message that the insulin actually connected. So what does the pancreas do? It just yells louder. It pumps out 5 to 7 times more insulin to try and force the message across. Now you're in a terrible situation. The insulin isn't working inside the cell, but you've got these massive destructive amounts of insulin just floating around elsewhere in your body. This traps you squarely in fat storage mode and pushes you right toward prediabetes. Let's move to part 4, the levels of fasting. This is where we build that biological ladder we talked about earlier. Now listen, you don't have to, and honestly, you really shouldn't jump to the absolute extreme right away. We're going to step up progressively. Step 1 starts incredibly simply. Just switch to exactly 3 meals a day with absolutely 0 snacks in between. Just breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Remember, every single snack is an insulin spike. So by simply cutting out the grazing, you're already giving your pancreas a much-needed break and lowering your baseline insulin levels. Then, once your body is totally comfortable with 3 meals a day, you step up to the 16-8 schedule, which is step 2. Let's say you wake up at 6 a.m. You wait until you're actually hungry, ideally about 4 hours later, around 10 a.m. to have your first meal. You then finish your last meal by 6 p.m. That gives you an 8-hour window to eat, followed by a 16-hour fasting window. Now, why 16 hours? Well, because the real, uninterrupted, serious fat-burning magic happens through the night while you're sleeping, and deep into the morning hours before you break that fast. Okay, to trigger massive, profound fat burning, you advance up the ladder to the final level, the 24 schedule. Notice the shift here. You still wake up at 6 a.m., but you ride that morning wave of fat burning all the way until 1 p.m. for your first meal. Then you close your eating window just 4 hours later at 5 p.m. That leaves you with 20 solid hours of serious fat burning, where your insulin is totally flatlined and your growth hormone is completely maximized. As Dr. Berg notes, you can only imagine what a 20-hour fast does to shrink your waistline and finally eliminate that stubborn gut. When we compare these strategies side by side, the progression is super clear. Moving from a 16-hour fast to a 20-hour fast shrinks your eating window in half, but it elevates your fat-burning potential from high to absolute maximum. It's a real game changer. You're deliberately taking control of your hormones just by expanding the time your body spends without insulin.
And finally, part 5, making the transition safely.
Now, you're probably wondering how you're going to endure 16 or 20 hours without food, right? Well, you absolutely cannot force this overnight. First off, you need to add more dietary fat to your meals. Fat is what keeps you full and bridges that hunger gap without causing a massive insulin spike. Second, be patient. Give your body weeks or even months to naturally adapt to burning its own fat reserves for fuel. Moving to that 16-8 level might take 3 weeks, and hitting the 24 level, that could take months. Third, if you've done extreme low-calorie diets in the past, your metabolism has basically been traumatized. It needs extra time to heal, so be gentle with your body. And finally, if you want the absolute maximum results, pair these fasting windows with high-intensity interval training. That's going to completely supercharge your growth hormone. I want to leave you with one final thought to reflect on today. Are your innocent, everyday snacks actually acting like earplugs to your cells, keeping you hopelessly trapped in fat storage mode? The science here is really clear, so I challenge you to make just one small adjustment tomorrow. Cut out the snacks, give your pancreas a rest, and take your very first step onto the biological ladder to unlock your health. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.